Good afternoon. I am Staff Sergeant Kevin Harrison with the Edmonton Police Service Historical Crime Section. Historical Crime Section encompasses both our missing persons unit and our historical homicide investigators. Our detectives know from experience that each unresolved case can impact families for generations. That's why we continue to review all our unsolved crime files using a modern investigative lens and today's technology. Missing persons cases never close until that person is found, including 83-year-old Ruth Clarke, who disappeared under suspicious circumstances in November of 1990. At the time, homicide investigators conducted an extremely thorough investigation, including many interviews and a variety of searches for Ruth's remains. The investigators were dedicated, and the initial investigation went on for 2 years. Ruth's family, who is with us here today, has remained involved and been in contact with our team throughout the years. Unfortunately, detectives were unable to locate Ruth's remains or obtain enough evidence to lay charges in her murder. Recent developments in the investigation have given us insight into the possible location of Ruth's remains. Her body is believed to have been hidden in a rural area less than an hour north of St. Albert on a farmstead where trails lead through brush to 2 old hand-dug water wells. The wells are up to 50 to 60 feet deep, one lined with wood and the other lined with brick. One or both wells may be filled and or covered with brush or debris and may be partially collapsed. Ruth's remains are believed to have been placed into the wood-lined well. Police have conducted a number of searches of the area. We did so in consultation with both internal and external experts. So far, we have been unsuccessful in locating Ruth. That's why we are now appealing to the public, in particular landowners and people familiar with the areas in question, to check their land, talk to their parents, their grandparents, or family historians. We understand there may be many wells that match this description. However, given our past searches, we know these wells are very challenging to locate. This could be due to the time that has passed, changing topography, and homesteads which have moved. If you have wells that match the description in the defined area, we are asking you to come forward to police with details. Investigators will need to speak with you to gather more information. This will assist us in continuing our search for Ruth's remains and hopefully bring a sense of resolution to her family, who have lived with this loss for decades. I will now turn it over to Ruth's nephew, Richard Wetmore, who has a few words he wants to say.
We'd just like to thank the detectives and officers and everyone in the Edmonton Police Service who've worked so hard to find out what happened to our aunt, Ruth. We are very appreciative of all that has been done and that they continue to search for her. It is our family's hope that we can lay her to rest next to her husband, which is what she wanted. So we would like to ask if anyone has any information that would help the Edmonton Police Service locate our Aunt Ruth, please reach out to the Edmonton Police Service. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. I'll now take any questions.
If we could just use the mic at the back. Questions, please. Hi there. Julia Wong, CBC News. You talked about looking at this case from a modern investigative lens and today's technology. Just curious if there were more recent developments in technology that led to some of these recent developments.
Although I can't get into the specifics of the investigation on this matter, what I can say is that this one was not necessarily in relation to new technology. Certainly we have the ability to search for us is different now. We have access to things like cadaver dogs and metal detectors and physical searches that, some of those things may not have been available to the investigators at the time. And certainly investigations as a whole in trying to search for someone have changed significantly over the years. The digital footprint that people leave behind, and the data tracking that's available to police now is quite different. The reality is in the 90s, this wasn't available to us.
Are police able to shed any further light on why Ruth was killed? And at this point in time, are there any suspects?
There was a suspect in the original investigation, and we do believe we know who killed Ruth. Unfortunately, because criminal charges have not been laid, we cannot release that name to the public.
Hi, what makes you so certain that that her body was put down a well?
I can't, unfortunately, I can't get into the details again of the investigation that led us to this, but this new information, which is compelling, led us to these searches, and we do believe that this to be accurate.
Information from a tip or from a suspect?
I can't get into that information, sorry.
Hi, I gather Ms. Clarke was living with her son at the time. There are some relatives here. I don't know exactly who they are. Is her son here amongst the relatives today?
He is not.
Is he still alive?
I cannot speak to the circumstances around those facts.
Okay. This is also a question maybe for you, maybe for someone in the family. Even going back to the original reporting, there was very little detail about Ruth as a person and about her life, and I just would love to hear a little bit more about her. I gather from one of the pictures sent out today that she had been a nurse. Just a little bit more about who she was.
Yeah, I would probably defer some of that to the family. I do know that my main investigator, Detective Mel Grace, knows Ruth quite well. We know that she was an aunt, that she was a loved family member, that her husband, she was predeceased by her husband, and like as the family mentioned, she wished to be with him, right? So I can't get into all the details of her background, though.
Do you think Mr. Wetmore potentially would be interested in? Not to put anyone on the spot, but yeah, okay.
Lauren Boothby, City News. What was known about her and the circumstances around her disappearance back in 1990? I know it was talked about, I think at the time it was said that there was like, it was suspicious, the circumstances around her disappearance. Can you tell us more about what that means?
It's difficult without being able to go into the investigation. I am aware of the significant media attention that was, out there in the 90s, and certainly that her disappearance was considered suspicious at the time, and it was presumed criminal, and it was investigated as a homicide. But to get into the specifics that led us to that, I unfortunately can't do that. It was heavily investigated.
So you can't say more about the circumstances were strange, that she had, I think she had left a cane and some glasses, so it looked like she left things behind that she would need, and that's what made you think that she might be killed.
Unfortunately, I don't have all those details now, and possibly we could maybe get back to some of those if they were part of a media release before. That's very possible, right? And we do consider those things in every missing persons investigation is what did that person take with them, but also what did they leave behind.
Okay. And at the time, the Edmonton Journal reported that investigators weren't sure if her death was related to other unsolved crimes against seniors in the area, including a senior about the same age killed in Edmonton, attempted murder in Edson, and attacks around Red Deer. Have you ruled out her death being a result of a series of murders, serial killer, or anything like that?
I would say that in this case, I'm very comfortable knowing the facts of this investigation that is not the case.
Okay. And can you tell us more about the new information? I know we had a few questions already, but when did you get the new information? And is the new information that she was in a well? Like, what's the part that's new that's helping you kind of like lead this go forward?
So I can't get into the investigation. I can tell you that the recent investigation has been going on for a couple of years, and that the information that we're asking the public to assist us with is quite specific. And that is why the challenge for us is that there may be many of these wells, and we don't know how many are out there. Our teams have been out. We've accessed such things as like online government interactive well mapped wells, or well maps, groundwater maps. And the reality is when you go out to these locations, those wells are not always where the map says they are. And so typically you have to engage the landowners, the farm owners, and they'll know that Uncle Jed down the road used to have a well by his farmstead on this quarter. And so they have to point it out to us. And so finding those wells we've seen has been extremely challenging. And we actually want people, we believe that these two wells were in proximity to each other. And we want people to come to us if they have wells that match that description in proximity to each other, and provide us with specifics about where they are and possibly even pictures, so that we can try to filter out the information and find Ruth.
Do you have an estimate of how many there are and how many you've searched so far and the timeline for that?
So this year alone, my team has been out, and we've searched 6 locations near the Bouchard Lake area. And that was in reference to those maps and involving sort of liaising with the experts in that area. But no, I don't want to speculate on how many there are, but based on the maps I've seen, there are many.
Like dozens, hundreds?
I would say hundreds. Many homesteads and farmsteads from that period, whether it's the early 1900s, would have started with a wood-lined well and then potentially progressed to a brick-lined well. And then you get into like now where they're drilling for them, right? So we're not interested in like drilled wells that are 200 feet deep. We're talking about ones that were hand dug in the early 1900s.
The press release makes mention of Ruth's son, Ronald Clarke. I'm just wondering if there's anything the public should be reading into that.
I am aware of the past media attention, but again, because we have not laid criminal charges, I can't speak, and for privacy reasons as well, I can't get into talking about details of her son.
And just curious, for anyone, if they were to come across something that may be suspicious and may look like remains, I mean, what do they do in that case?
So if you, again, I would imagine that most times people won't happen across remains down inside a well, although if you come across remains of any kind, you need to contact the police, because that is certainly within our missing persons unit. They investigate all cases of unidentified human remains on behalf of the medical examiner, and then potentially our homicide teams become involved depending on the circumstances of that death.
Hi. At the end of the release, it also says that you're asking people to come forward if they have any information about Ruth's activities at the time or the activities of immediate family. Can you just speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, we recognize that a significant time has passed, that although the investigators would have spoken to many people who were known to Ruth at the time, people's life circumstances change. They may not have known, if there was some type of information that came to them, some type of disclosure that came to them, how important it was. And maybe they see this in the media and see how important it might be now, and they're willing to come forward and speak with police now. Then we want to hear what they have to say.
I know, police always say that a case is never closed. Do you want to speak on that at all? Here we are 35 years later, and you are still looking and still obviously trying to lay a charge or come to a conclusion in this homicide.
Yeah, it's both the case for missing persons cases that are unsolved and historical homicides. My office holds many, unfortunately, but they do remain open. And every investigation is different, and the level that we're able to get them to and the status of those, changes, depends on technology that's available to us, witnesses being willing to come forward, et cetera. But you're absolutely correct that these cases do not close, and that we, based on new information that comes forward, we will act on them as best as we possibly can.
And just one point of clarity, in the past, even though it was clear that this was considered very suspicious and a probable homicide, it seems like this is the first time that officially it's being declared a homicide in the public realm.
I believe, and I could be incorrect, but I do believe it was declared or treated, it was certainly investigated and treated as a homicide in the 90s, and we still consider it that.
Yeah, I think in the original stories it said that homicide investigators were investigating and that it was highly suspicious,
yeah.
but maybe it wasn't officially in the public declared a homicide.
Right. And there's that challenging gray area in all missing persons cases that are suspicious, where it's getting it to that point where there's that evidence and getting it over the hump to be able to prove that. And I will say that in the last 20, 30 years, we've come a long way in our ability to transition those files, to recognize the danger in them and the absence of footprints of life, and be able to substantiate and corroborate that we believe this to be a homicide. And that's so in this case.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you describe what an abandoned well top would look like? Like how large is that?
I'm not an expert by any means, but based on my team's investigations thus far and the pictures I've seen, they're typically, I think they'd be typically anywhere from like 2, potentially 3 feet wide. And, we've seen pictures of ones, and I think there's pictures of ones up here where they do have kind of wood shoring around them as it goes deeper. But we know that, farmers that may have these on their property would also be concerned about someone falling into them just by accident. And so they typically get stuff dumped in them, or they might have covers, metal covers like bars, grates put over top of them as well, to prevent someone from falling in. So they could be overgrown by this point, right? Something that's 100 years old, might look very different than it did even 30 years ago.
Do you believe she disappeared from the place? Do you think she was killed from the last place that she was known to be?
Yeah, I unfortunately can't.
Okay.
I can't get into those details.
Do you believe she knew her killer?
I would, I guess, make the statement that I don't believe this was a random attack.
Thanks.
Just wonder if you can clarify, is Ronald Clarke has he been cleared as a suspect? Is he ruled out as a suspect?
I can't speak more on that for privacy reasons specifically. And again, because of the fact that we cannot or have not laid criminal charges, I can't get into the details of that.
You talked about how the investigative methods have changed since then. What is it that you're able to do now, or that you do differently now, that might help you find her versus back in the 90s?
When it comes to this investigation, I think it is just truly it's having a new set of eyes. Having a detective like Detective Mel Grace go over the entire investigation and see all points, review everything that's happened over the years, speaking to potentially witnesses again, or people involved again. Life circumstances may have changed for those people. They may be willing to provide new information. So in that case, I think it's truly, in this one, it's a lot of it is passage of time. And there are other investigative techniques that, unfortunately wouldn't put forward at this point, but that are available to us.
She was a very caring, compassionate person, always a very sweet lady, quite shy. And like I say, she was always a favorite aunt of ours. Unfortunately, it's been 30-some years, and we lived quite a distance from her, so I don't have a lot of memories of my aunt, so I don't have much more to elaborate on that. But she was a very sweet lady, and we were all miss her very much, and we're concerned when when she disappeared, and as I mentioned, we've been working with the police for years to try and find out what happened.
She was retired?
Yes, she was. She
What
was.
did her husband do before he passed?
He had been a farmer for some years, and he worked as in a toll booth in one of the downtown parking lots in Edmonton just prior to retiring.
Did they have several children?
Just the one son. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Can you tell us like a story about her? So kind
I'm
of
s-
anecdote a bit more about her?
Sorry, I don't have much. Like I say, it's many, many years ago, and it's because we lived it this way, I didn't have a lot of interactions with her.
How do you feel about this kind of development, I guess, in this college republic? Does it feel be good to have something new to like push forward?
Definitely, we would very much like to find our Aunt Ruth, and like I say, she had wished to be buried next to her husband, and we would like to give her a proper burial and to have some closure for all of us.
Can I just ask one question? You know, obviously you're all here today. You care about your aunt. Can you speak about what it's been like to have this, I guess, hanging over your family all these years, or to have this tragic event having been a question mark all these years?
That's exactly it. It's you never know, and it's always this big unknown, and it's we would very much like to be able to have that certainty and to like I say, to find her and bring her back and give her a proper burial.
Can you tell me what her husband's name was as well?
It was Ruth Clarke.